Yo guys, what is up? Moxsy here with another Borderlands 3 video, and today guys, we have one of my craziest builds, I think since the Nimbus build. Usually, we started off with gameplay, but there's so many mechanics that we're exploiting in this build and so many different things that we're using that I wanted to quickly cover the mechanics of the build before we jump into the gameplay. Then when you look at the gameplay, you'll understand what's going on, and then we'll go back into the build and what's going on here. So this build is a Grenadier Jacobs melee cryo Zane build that's really fun. So just briefly, what we're exploiting here is we're using a few things. We're using a big boom blaster that'll always give us our grenades back. So we're getting tons and tons of grenades because we're using distributed denial, which is going to make the shield that we're holding our barrier, which is going to drop boosters that restore grenade ammo and increase, we're getting boosters that increase our weapon damage, which is really cool. While terrified, we get ammo regeneration. The more terror you have, the higher the bonus. So we're getting tons and tons of ammo back. We're using a cryo hex that melee attacks have a 25% chance to apply terror to yourself. We're using a face puncher with melee attacks have 25% chance to apply terror to yourself. The reason we're using these things is because most terror anointments are on action skill end, and the whole point of Zane is that we're going to have our action skill up the entirety of the time. So we're going to give ourselves terror with this. We're going to be using a Hellwalker and a Maggie, both with anointments deal 50% bonus cryo damage. Guys, I'm going over the We'll go over the core. I just want to show you guys the mechanics. You don't need all of these things for this to work. But, so, while terrified, we're going to get bonus 50% damage. So we're going to shoot someone with the face puncher. This doesn't matter how many stacks. As long as we're terrified just by a little bit, we're going to be doing bonus cryo damage. So we don't need our Sentinel out, because the Sentinel perk gives us cryo damage while Sentinel out, but we're just going to be terrified all the time. So we're going to get bonus 50 cryo damage, which is going to increase the damage that we do with everything. This is not just your guns, it's your grenades do bonus cryo damage, and we're going to be throwing a ton of Mervtacular Hex grenades. And we're not using Sentinel or drones, we're only using the barrier skill, and that is to free up our ability to use grenades. With the big boom blaster, we're going to be able to throw grenades like crazy and regen them like crazy because we're going to be taking a lot of damage. And so we'll never ever run out of grenades. This way we can spam grenades. Everything is going to be frozen, which works really well with this whole tree. We'll get into that shortly. We're using a Disastrous Executor with weapon damage, Jacob's weapon critical damage, and shotgun damage. This makes the Hellwalker absolutely silly. And on top of that, we're going to be using Icebreaker Victory Rush with cryo damage, cryo efficiency. This one has SMG damage, which isn't ideal for us, but it's fine. And so how the build plays and works is we're spamming grenades as much as we can. Everything's going to be frozen. We're running around with the Hellwalker, hitting enemies in their head, and running around with the Maggie hitting enemies with their head. We're going to be terrified when we switch to our face puncher to proc our buff real quick, and then we could just go to town. This build works really well. We're going to show the gameplay now, and then we'll come back and go over more about the build.
separate, but it seems the time has come. Then you run my life, no hope to fight, little time to hide. I'm sinking under, drowning faster, please just let me breathe. The air is leaving and I'm lost in need of you again. You break me down and you make me surrender. We are as Romeo and Juliet. To a code we all swore, for this life we have chosen. Leading the soldiers to a common war we fight, to this passion of love we may fail and die. Slipping further, we're falling faster, we're growing stronger. Let's have the weaker than I know.
Alright. As you guys saw, build's pretty crazy. There's a lot going on. And if you guys didn't notice, the build is very similar in core to our Sheriff Zane build. Very similar setup, but the big difference is that we're not using Sentinel because we're freeing up that spot to use our grenades. With Distributed Denial, we're able to use the Big Boom Blaster as our barrier, allowing us to get a ton of grenades back. That doesn't really help us if we can't throw the grenades. So now we're able to throw all the grenades. In this tree, we're gaining action skill cooldown rate, shield recharge delay, damage resistances. This skill's super important, Brain Freeze, that allows us to use non-cryo weapons with Zane. The reason we use things such as the Dastardly Maggie and the Hellwalker is because they're multi-pellet weapons that when we can hit a critical hit with on an enemy, multiple bullets will be hitting their critical hit spot, meaning that we can instant freeze them. We're not too worried about instant freezing everything, though. It's really nice to get our cooldowns back, but everything's going to be frozen because we're throwing so many grenades. And here, Lifesteal's super nice. Calm, Cool, Collected is a essential part of a lot of Zane builds. I've tried Zane builds without this skill. They're a lot harder. This skill is super, super nice and a huge quality of life. It's going to give us our action skill back when we freeze something with full health and shields. Nerves of Steel, just 1 point for some accuracy. And then Distributed Denial. Here, I like this reload speed. The reload speed is going to give us, because the Maggie and the Hellwalker are guns that you reload a lot, this reload speed is going to increase and up our damage. Violent Momentum for the gun damage. And Death Follows for longer kill skill duration and bonuses, which is super nice to have. This skill, Synchronicity, I always say that right, is really awesome when you have your 2 action skills. It's still worth picking up. 20% damage while our action skill up is still nice and still worth it picking up. Obviously, it'd be great if we could have 2, but we need those grenades. That's part of this build. So we're still picking it up, but we're not benefiting from it as much as like Sheriff Zane does. And then Donnybrook for gun damage and health regeneration. Now, the core of this build is not using Sentinel, using this skill tree, and using multi-pellet weapons. You don't need to do all this Terror Anointment. This ammo regeneration, while terrified, you don't need this anointment. The melee attacks, you don't need, but they are something that you guys can aim for endgame. For example, if you aren't running something like this, you could use something like this. While Barrier's active accuracy is increased by 60% and critical hit damage is increased by 30%. That's also really nice to use. So if you don't want to run the Terror Anointment, you can run something like this. And as long as you have a Terror Anointment on your shield or your grenade, you should be good. The biggest thing is we need a Terror Anointment on our shield or grenade, because otherwise, when we get terrified, our accuracy will just go to hell, which sucks. But using something like this while barrier active is also really effective. I wanted to show off how cool it can be doing melee attacks with the face puncher to proc 50% bonus damage. That's super nice and gives us a lot. This class mod, obviously pretty perfect roll, and if you guys can get your hands on something like this, it'll make your life a lot easier with something like this build. Pistol damage would be even nicer. And then the Victory Rush, Icebreaker Victory Rush, similar class mod to what we were using in our Sheriff Zane build. Now, this build and this gear, if you guys didn't notice, I am playing on PC. This build and a lot of this gear I was able to acquire from save files. I did not magically overnight become True Vol Hunter mode Mayhem 3 ready with Zane. So there are save files that I use to get all of this gear, just letting you guys know. And I will leave my save file in the description if you guys want to try this build out if you're on PC. You guys have been always asking for my save files. Well, now I'm on PC, so I'm happy to share that with you guys. The core of this build was sent to me by someone in my Discord, just full disclosure, and then I went and got the gear to pimp it out myself. So hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're gonna leave you with some more gameplay maybe. I always say that and then I'm not sure how the length of the video, but hope you guys enjoyed. Give this build a try. The save file will be in the bottom. Peace.